Hello and welcome to SaltWire today for Thursday, November 10th. I'm your host, Kate Walker. Firefighters spent much of the afternoon trying to put out a massive house fire in Halifax. Halifax Regional Fire says crews were called here to Drillio Crescent in the Fairmount neighborhood around 2:45. Crews received numerous calls about the fire and smoke filling the area. When firefighters arrived, the house was substantially engulfed in flames. Crews don't believe anyone was inside, and there were no reported injuries as of late this afternoon. There's no word on the cause of the fire. Overcapacity issues are impacting hospitals across the province, especially here in HRM. The Halifax Infirmary reported Tuesday that it was at 103% capacity and expected to be seriously over capacity through the weekend. It warned that people should expect long waits in the emergency room if they must go. 31 of 44 beds in the ER at that point were filled with people who had been admitted but with no inpatient beds available. As of midnight Wednesday, the Halifax number had dropped to 99%, but was still far above the ideal number of 85% that Nova Scotia Health says allows the ability to deal with any sudden surge in admissions or staff shortages. Dartmouth General was at 109% capacity, and all other sites except the East Coast Forensic Hospital and the IWK were over 85%. Health officials say a combination of factors, including more complex cases and staffing shortages, are causing the overcapacity issues, and they don't see it getting any better in the next several days with the flu season around the corner. Nova Scotia is reporting 15 new deaths related to COVID-19. In the public health dashboard update, it shows while these are new numbers, the deaths are from previous reporting periods, not this week. In today's update that covers from November 1st to 7th, there were 671 new cases and 35 new hospital admissions. The new deaths bring the total in Nova Scotia during the pandemic to 617, including 14 last week and 505 since the Omicron waves began in December 2021. The median age of those who have died is 83. As of November 8th, there were 40 people in hospital, down from 43 last week, including 7 in ICU. More developments are underway in downtown Halifax. This afternoon, HRM's Design Review Committee began considering a development on Barrington Street. Right now, the 4.5-story building, which was constructed in the 80s, is owned by Universal Realty Group and rented out as office space. They're proposing to tear down the current structure and build an 8-story mixed-use building that would be a combination of apartments, townhomes, and retail shops. There are 73 residential units in total, 6 two-bedroom townhouse-style units, 41 two-bedroom units, and 26 one-bedroom units. They need the committee's approval for their site plan, as well as 4 variances from the Downtown Halifax land use bylaw. These exceptions involve elements like street wall heights and setbacks. There's also a rule that if a developer wants to build to maximum permitted building heights, they must provide a public benefit. In this case, Universal is opting for a cash-in-lieu option of nearly $200,000. If the committee approves the site plan and variances, property owners will be notified and will have a chance to appeal. If there are no appeals, it would move along to the development permit approval stage. Hurricane Fiona downed thousands of trees across Nova Scotia, and in the northern part of the province, the damage is raising questions on how we can better manage the trees to lessen the impact for future storms. SaltWire's Aaron Beswick visited a former pasture in Fraser's Mountain where they're processing woodlots laid flat by Hurricane Fiona.
Crews around northern Nova Scotia have a lot of work ahead of them as they process woodlots laid flat by Hurricane Fiona. The damage to our forests is also raising questions about how we can better manage them to lessen the impact of future hurricanes, which climate change is projected to make stronger. SaltWire visited a 150-acre former pasture on Fraser's Mountain, where Next Generation Forestry is processing white spruce that was tossed down by Fiona.
This is an old pasture. It all grew back in white spruce. Majority of 70% of these trees are now blown down. So it makes it far more difficult to process them or to make them into logs.
And why? Why is this?
The way the trees are laying, the stumps are up, so it's awkward to get the machinery in around the stumps and to compared to when the trees were still standing, it's far more difficult to get them maneuvered where you want them into a pile of products, logs or studwood.
The prevalence of valuable spruce logs on this site makes it financially feasible to process it and replant. But many other woodlot owners weren't as lucky. For them, Fiona just left a mess of toppled trees that would cost more to cut than the logs they'd produced would pay for. In the years to come, those sites will become a forest fire hazard. For foresters in government and scientists in academia, Fiona was a stark reminder of how, as they seek to implement the Leahy Report's recommendations of lessening human impacts on ecosystems, we need to also think about what stronger hurricanes brought on by climate change will mean for our best laid plans. This is Aaron Beswick reporting for the SaltWire Network.
Remembrance Day is tomorrow, a day to honor the fallen veterans who served for our country, as well as those who currently serve. Today, we're shining the spotlight on SaltWire columnist John DeMont's late grandfather, Jack Briers, who enlisted in the Canadian Army in the First World War.
I didn't know my grandfather well. Mostly, that was because I lacked the usual curiosity of youth. But Jack Briers didn't talk too much, which is often the case with heroes. Had I asked, I would have heard that he went into the Cape Breton mines at 11, and a decade later decided to do his part for the Allies in the First World War. Mostly, he was a mystery to me, until I saw his war records. As part of the 1st Canadian Division, he was in the trenches for the most horrific battles of the war, the Somme, Passchendaele, and Vimy Ridge, when Canada became a country. Back in Sydney mines, after the war, he went about his life, working as an inspector in the mines, helping to raise 3 daughters, finding solace in music, trying, I imagine, to forget all of the horrors he had seen. This is John DeMont for the SaltWire Network in Halifax.
If you're looking for an evening of entertainment on Friday night in Halifax, Windsor singer-songwriter Tara Spencer will be launching her new album, Old News, on the stage at St. Andrews. The record features the Music Nova Scotia award-winning musician performing solo and in duets with well-known Halifax musician Ben Kaplan. She talked with SaltWire Network's Stephen Cook to explain how the project came together.
I remember you.
It had only been 2 months since the release of Tara Spencer's second album, Chasing Rabbits, when she decided she had some new songs she thought might sound good with a male voice. The tunes had a wistful storytelling aspect to them that made her think of Ben Kaplan, whose broad, expressive baritone has become known to audiences across North America in the musical Old Stock, a refugee love story, as well as his own records. She only knew Kaplan in passing from encounters at music industry events, so when she called him up out of the blue, she had no idea his invitation to drop in for tea would result in a whole new record called Old News.
We didn't know each other really at all. But I knew of Ben, of course, but we weren't friends. And he was very gracious to have me over to his place just in between lockdowns, I think January 2021. And I played him a couple of tunes and was shocked when he got back to me after that little gathering and asked me if I wanted to make a whole record, because I'd just finished a whole record.
Old News is a different sort of record for both artists, with roots in the kind of folk music they're both known for, but with elements of jazz and show tunes that highlight the narrative feel of the songs and the drama in their duets.
The inspiration for me was in part Ella and Louie, because their voices blended, you can say, but it's because they were so different from each other. And that's true for me and Ben. It's a lion and mouse kind of situation.
When she's not recording, touring, or conducting a songwriting workshop, Spencer works as a funeral director in Windsor, a job that brings her in contact with a wide range of people and also provides a window into the lives of the people in her community. While she tends to keep her 2 professional lives separate from each other, she says for Old News there was some inspiration that surfaced in songs like At Your Service and the first song she showed to Kaplan, titled VHS.
I was inspired by a story that I would see in real life, working at a funeral home as a funeral director, with a gentleman where the matriarch has passed away in a family. And the gentleman of the family is left behind and has to figure out life in a new way now. So those 2 things bundled together made VHS.
While Kaplan is out west with a production of Old Stock, Spencer launches Old News with shows on the stage at St. Andrews in Halifax on Friday, Don Omen Art Gallery in Bridgetown on December 3rd, and the Al Whittle Theatre in Wolfville on December 16th. In Halifax, I'm Stephen Cook for the SaltWire Network.
It's time for Prices at the Pumps with fuel price insider Dan McTagg. Dan shares his thoughts on where fuel prices may be headed at midnight in Nova Scotia and why our region sometimes doesn't match the rest of Canada.
We're looking at about a 5-cent increase, maybe a 7-cent increase for gasoline, and as much as 8, 9, or even 10 cents for diesel. I'm saying that because although everywhere else is going to see a drop, you folks in Atlantic Canada are going to see increases because they have a different set of numbers and a different methodology. These prices should not be going up. They should be dropping, unless, of course, someone has indicated, the Irving refinery in particular, that there's force majeure and they can't supply enough diesel and gasoline into the market.
And Dan will be back next week on Prices at the Pumps. It's time now for a glimpse of today's Thinking Out Loud with Sheldon McLeod. Today, Sheldon is speaking with NDP leader Claudia Chender.
Claudia Chender is a leader of an opposition party in a legislature in Canada. Is the system working? Is it working to the benefit of the people who need the help the most?
I mean, I think in the balance of all things, I would say yes, insofar as this system, we have free and fair elections, and the, outcome of those elections is accepted. And then the people who form a government are allowed to govern. So especially as we look south of the border, I think we have to be thankful of our democratic system. And, I think what's so important in the cynicism around politics, which has been around for a long time, it's not new, is that decisions still get made.
And for Sheldon's full conversation, head to the opinion section of saltwire.com. Time now for the Atlantic Sports Wire, presented by Scott Squires.
Here's part 2 of my conversation with Sydney, Nova Scotia native Joey Haddad, who played 12 seasons of professional hockey, including his last 7 internationally. I'm always very intrigued when athletes go overseas or go international to play. That brings me to the Cardiff Devils, a Welsh hockey team part of the British Elite Hockey League. How did you end up going to Cardiff, and what was that whole experience like?
I was looking for a change after, I didn't re-sign with Pittsburgh and had a couple other years and a couple other AHL stints and stuff like that. And I was just looking for a change. I mean, you hear a lot about European hockey and playing overseas and the different experience and so on. And during that season, I was approached. I got a phone call from Andrew, and he let me know that he was going to be the head coach in Cardiff. He let me know that there was a few other players from my neck of the woods. Stuart McRae played there for a few years, and he was also talking to Chris Culligan at the time. So me and Chris, being good friends, kind of chatted about it and said, you know what, we heard from Stuart, and all the boxes were kind of checked, and we kind of just went for it, and we went over together. We lived together that first year. Personally, I had success playing. As a team, we had success right through the 6 years, some highs and lows. We had 6 trophies in the 6 seasons before the pandemic hit. And it's just, it's like you said, you never know where hockey is going to take you and what experiences are there for you. I'm allowed to keep talking about it again and again. So it's all good. Yeah.
Fun fact, Joey's first professional goal was scored back in 2009 as a member of the Wheeling Nailers of the East Coast Hockey League. In Halifax, I'm Scott Squires for the Atlantic Sports Wire.
Thank you, Scott. On to weather now to see what's coming up in the long weekend forecast. We're going to check in now with our weather specialist, Alistair Alders.
Thanks, Kate. Well, many people will be heading to their local cenotaph like this one here in Bedford for Remembrance Day ceremonies tomorrow. And if you are heading out, the weather is looking fair and mild. This evening, the temperature will be near 10 degrees with partly cloudy skies, and then waking up on Friday morning, mainly sunny. We start the day near 12 degrees, but at around the time you're at the cenotaph, 11 a.m., the temperature will be near 16 degrees. We do head up to a high of 18 degrees on Friday afternoon with a mix of sun and cloud. And then attention shifts over to the upcoming weekend. What was once Hurricane Nicole, the remnants of that storm will be moving through Atlantic Canada. So we'll have periods of rain, at times heavy developing, early on Saturday with gusty south and southwest winds. Now in terms of how much rain, does look like about 30 to 40 millimeters of rain, possibly up to 50 millimeters locally here in Halifax. There will also be a risk of downpours, so those local pockets are certainly possible. And winds will be gusting anywhere from 50 to 70 kilometers per hour, but don't be surprised if, especially directly along parts of the coast, we see some winds gusting up to maybe 70 up to 90 kilometers per hour. Then this system does start to gradually taper off as we go Saturday night into Sunday, but there will be a lingering trough on our Sunday. So it's going to be a cloudy day with a chance of showers and maybe even some more steadier periods of rain developing Sunday night, with the temperature much cooler, 18 on Saturday down to 10 degrees on our Sunday. So thankfully the weather looking good for Remembrance Day ceremonies tomorrow, but do be prepared for an unsettled weekend, especially compared to the last few that we've had where it's been nice and mild. Lest we forget. Kate?
Thank you, Alistair. That's all for now. For more extended video and full online articles, stay tuned to saltwire.com. And you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at SaltWire Today. I'm your host, Kate Walker. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here Monday.